This is Support is Sexy, episode 158, with Joanne Roberts, co-founder of What Now, What Next. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here because it just would not be the same without you. So today we are welcoming Miss Joanne Roberts, and Joanne is the co-founder of an organization called What Now, What Next. It really is more like a network of women entrepreneurs. You can go on their website, which I highly suggest, and we'll give you more information about that within this episode. But go on their website, see all of the great offerings from the women entrepreneurs who are there. And they also have a marketplace, which I think is brilliant, where you can list your services, your company, whatever your offering is for free so that other people can see it there. And then other people can, of course, connect with you and hopefully you can work together. It's a great idea, a great resource. So I highly encourage you to, of course, listen to this episode, but then go and post your company there if it makes sense for you. Of course, I love it because it is another example of women supporting women. Joanne has created a space for women and women entrepreneurs to come together, to connect, and to support each other. And we're all about that because support is sexy. So in addition to hearing about What Now, What Next from Joanne on this episode, you'll also learn about recognizing that now is the time, knowing that failing doesn't mean that you're a failure. I think that's such a great quote from Joanne. And actually, I am planning a series on failure. So look for that coming up. We're going to talk about failure a little bit. Joanne also talks about finding new ways to be your own entrepreneur, how to tap into what's next, how to connect the dots of your experience to inform your reinvention, how to be brave enough to ask the question, what now, what's next? Also realizing that thoughts become things, the value of taking risks, and starting with the end result in mind. So I know you're going to love this episode. Great information from Joanne. And as I mentioned, really love what she's created with What Now, What Next. So listen out for how you can get involved and be a part of the marketplace. All right. So without further ado, Joanne Roberts. So Joanne, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to talk to you.
And I'm so excited to be here, Elaine. It's wonderful to meet you.
Excellent. So first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Well, I fell in love with entrepreneurship when I was a child, and my dad worked in the television industry and sat around the dinner table talking about all his wonderful and exciting television shows and deals that he was working on. And what I really wanted to do was to become a TV producer. But I grew up when TV was an industry that was a men's only club and was closed to women. And I got married early on at 19. And like so many of women of my generation, I became a teacher. But then I moved to Los Angeles for my husband's job, and there was no reciprocity with teaching. And luckily for me, the feminist movement was really taking off in a big way, and women were breaking through boundaries. So I met people in the television industry and knocked on every door I could and just was passionate about becoming a television producer and creating my own shows. And I was lucky enough to do that, and becoming a producer really led me to starting companies that led me to really calling myself an entrepreneur. I didn't really think of myself as an entrepreneur early on, Elaine. I don't even think that word existed, maybe in the French dictionary. But over the years, I've really come to just love everything about entrepreneurship. The freedom, the ability to create something new, something that I'm passionate about that wouldn't exist without me. And then bring that into reality.
What year was it when you moved to LA and you mentioned that the feminist movement was sort of taking shape at that time?
So that was like in the mid 70s. And really, as I said, I had never thought about entrepreneurship. I had hoped that one day I could be something other than a teacher. But quite honestly, it took a while for, the webs to fall away from my eyes. And I think that if it wasn't for the feminist movement, I'd probably still be a teacher. And in fact, I ran into Gloria Steinem quite by accident the other day.
Wow.
Yeah. And I told her that, and she started laughing. And, I just said, if it weren't for you, Gloria, I would still be sitting in a kindergarten classroom. And, thank you for breaking through those boundaries for women and, making women of my generation realize that we could really do anything that we set our minds to, that it was a made up story, that it was a men's only club.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to ask you actually about. What was it, do you feel like, that was about the feminist movement, directly or indirectly, that you sort of felt or that resonated with you, that let you know that, hey, I can do this no matter what, the boys club says?
Right. Well, I mean, there were so many of these kind of stereotypes about what women did and what men did. But as I said, while it was great sitting in a kindergarten classroom telling stories to kids, I really wanted to create my own stories. I wanted to create bigger stories. And as the feminist movement kind of marched on, suddenly these men-only industries like the television industry realized that, when women started working in the business, they could do phenomenal jobs, that they were highly motivated, they brought different skills, and a lot of pent-up passion and enthusiasm.
What were the shows that you went on to create?
Well, the first one that I created for syndication, because my dream, sitting around that dinner table, it was, and going with my dad to the NATP conventions. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're TV programming conventions.
No.
I dreamed of standing there with my own TV series. And so the first TV series that I created and brought to NAPI was a show called The Dr. Fad Show. And it was an invention game show for kids, where kids presented their ideas to a studio audience of, it's kind of like a Shark Tank before Shark Tank, but a very nice tank, where kids pitched these working models of their inventions to a studio audience who voted for their favorites. And we were syndicated all across the country and in 20 countries internationally. And we developed partnerships with schools and science museums and the U.S. Patent Association, and we created study guides for teachers, and we became part of a national invention movement. And, as with most entrepreneurial ventures, the timing was really right, because the FCC was requiring local stations to air 2 hours of educational programming a week. And, in fact, my educational background came in very handy. That's right. So, even though, you don't always see connections between things, one thing really led to another in a very kind of amazing way.
Now, where did you grow up? Did you tell us that in the beginning?
No, I grew up in Little Neck and then moved to Great Neck when I was 14. And, as I said, sat around the dinner table listening to my dad regale me with these wonderful stories of the television industry every night. Mm-hmm. So, those were that was my formative years. And I was really lucky to be able to, accomplish what I dreamt about doing as a kid, even though the road was a very different one than I imagined. And, took the help of the feminist movement for me to make that happen.
Would you say that your dad was one of your biggest influences growing up, or were there some others in your life at that time?
He was very much so, because he was so passionate and enthusiastic about what he was doing. And, it wasn't like he was, ran a car wash or something that didn't seem all that appealing to me. It was like he was really working in an industry where, where he was doing something that felt very, really like a huge amount of fun and something that was very important. And so, yeah, he was was a role model and a big influence on me growing up.
When you went to school, going to college, did you study education? Did you
I
have
did.
in mind, at least at that time, that you were going to be a teacher?
Oh, yeah. I studied education. I got a master's degree in early childhood education, and I taught kindergarten for several years, and I loved being a kindergarten teacher. It was an enormous amount of fun. And I probably would have continued teaching for longer, but my ex-husband got a job in Los Angeles, and we moved to Los Angeles for his career. And as I think I said earlier, it was almost impossible for me to get a job in the television industry because there was no reciprocity with the teaching license. So, then I started thinking, okay, here I am in the land of television. Everybody I'm meeting either works in television or movies, and maybe
Now is the time.
Yeah, maybe now's the time. And then it was one segue after another. After working in television, creating my television production company, then in 1995, when the internet business was just starting to take off, I realized that I could bring my television producing skills to the web. And I was fortunate enough to, after having just produced the Dr. Fad show, to realize that there was a need for kids programming and teen programming, and both AOL and Prodigy were leaders of kids programming online. So I put together a presentation with my business partner at the time, and we went to both AOL and Prodigy, and they both offered us a deal within the first meeting because we had the skill set to produce a brand and brands. We had the business background to develop a business. We had community outreach through. With that, we launched an online workshop for kid inventors and entrepreneurs, and it was building on communities that I had already developed through my television career with the teachers and kid inventors and science museums and the patent office. So, I very soon became an internet entrepreneur.
And that was the site Kids Sites 3000, right?
Yeah, that was Kids Sites 3000. And we had one of the largest communities for teens that was called Getting Real. And we built that through a series of partnerships with AOL. The Kids Biz Invention Connection was funded by AOL, and they paid us. They charged, I don't remember if you remember, but they used to charge $2.95 an hour for an internet connection,
which people can't even imagine now.
No, I know, it's crazy, and we would get 59 cents of every time they made $2.59 an hour, we made 59 cents, and then we had a political website for kids with CBS. It was the first actually online election website, 1996. We did the site. We did it again in 2000 with Nickelodeon, and during that time, we built Getting Real. And Getting Real was really the first online community to use social media. We had music, we had animation, we had kids creating their own profile. When I say kids, I really mean teens creating their own profiles. And Ameritech came in as an investor at the time because you remember the Baby Bells wanted to attract customers, and in those days too, they were the main way that you would get online was through a hub, through your telephone company, telephone provider. and then now with what next, sort of building on what I learned early on in building web communities, but in reaching out to a community of women who are more like me, who are entrepreneurs, who I feel a complete affinity for.
Mm-hmm. How did you know, though, from the time of going from, we talked about teacher to producer because of, well, one, just proximity, right? Being closer to the industry that you're supposed to be around, which was probably destined for you. But then with becoming an entrepreneur, of knowing that you were feeling confident to know that you could make that transition, which is what will lead to what now, what next. But just knowing that you could make that change and be an entrepreneur, what was it in you that let you know at that time, okay, I could create something of my own here beyond a television show?
Right. I mean, what it was that, I realized that by creating a television series like the Dr. Fad Show, I had to build a company. Mm-hmm. So I built a production company where I had, associate producers, writers, directors, cameramen, you name it, it goes into a television production. So they were all working for me. I was working on budgets. I had a set budget for every episode. I had partners, distribution partners, station groups. I paid the bills every week. I had my cash flow. I knew what my revenues were. And what I really was learning was how to be an entrepreneur, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was running my own business. So it's really a matter of, what do you call it? Do you call it the president of a company, or do you call it the CEO of a company, or do you call it an entrepreneur? I think those names can be interchangeable, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And then with Kid Sites, it was sort of just this other idea that you were able to execute because you already had, as you said, all of that experience came together.
Yeah. And so, I knew how to take something from concept to reality. Mm-hmm. I had learned an enormous amount about how important it was to set up a collaborative team, how to find the most creative people to work with, people who are more creative than I was in very many ways, to really support my vision, which was also their vision, because they were equally excited about coming to work in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And then from there, when is the point that you said to yourself, what now?
What now, what next?
Yeah.
So do you want to talk specifically about how did I segue to what now, what next, and how did that happen?
Yeah, I would love to know that.
Sure. Well, so the internet content business pretty much tanked in 2000. It went from a cost per thousand of $35 that advertisers were paying for, your audience, mm-hmm. to $2. And I had been strongly encouraged by my investors, Ameritech, to open a big office to support these big brands. And I had 20 people working for me, and I had just adopted my daughter, Lola, who was 15 months old at the time. And, I found myself sitting in my office in the Flatiron District, biting my nails, saying, how in God's name am I going to pay all these people this week? And mm-hmm. It was so stressful, and companies were closing left and right. And I just decided that, it was time to close the doors to that company. And, I did do that. And
how difficult was that?
It was horrible, but, it was one of the things that the lessons that I've learned is that failing doesn't mean that you're a failure.
Right.
Right. It's like when my internet company, when the Dr. Fad show went off the air, it was like we just weren't generating the kind of revenues that stations needed anymore in terms of, ratings after 5 years. So, of being distributed nationally and internationally, I took to my bed. I was so freaking depressed. I was like, I can't believe this is over. It's like, how
Mm-hmm.
did this happen? Why don't they want my show anymore? But then I, of course, got out of bed and started something new. And I think that, as if you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to adapt and you've got to keep going. And so, so I'd already experienced that one rather major failure. And this closing the internet company was extremely disappointing, because we had planned it we thought we were having an IPO and, we didn't. But I was so excited about becoming a mom, and I had luckily bought a lot of AOL stock when AOL, I think I was like, it went from 17 to 180 and it just, so I had enough money to sort of regroup for a while and see what it was, really enjoy the experience of being a mother.
Smart.
Oh yeah. And look at other opportunities to work from home. So I started doing brand development for other kinds of businesses, big and small, and marketing and creating websites for companies and for individuals. And I could really, because it was the internet, I could do a lot of that from home. Sure, I went to meetings and sure I had to do pitch presentations, but I could sit in my room working while Lola was in the other room, and Lola's my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just worked out so well for me, really,
Right.
And it was a shift, I wasn't being an entrepreneur anymore, but I was doing what I had always done, which was to create things this time for other people, brands for other businesses. And it was certainly something I knew how to do and do pretty well.
And it was like, but sort of like you were still an entrepreneur. It just looked a little different.
Yeah. I mean, I was still out finding new ways to generate money. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I didn't have a payroll. You know what I mean? I didn't have office costs. I didn't have business costs, but actually you can be an entrepreneur without doing all of that.
Right.
In this day and age, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, so what next really came out of that reinvention.
Yes.
Right? So I was once again in the process of reinventing myself. And most of my women friends over 40 were in the same boat. And so I met Peggy Doyle, who's my current partner, and had actually worked for me when I had kid sites. And she ran the development of programming and led production at the company. And so we decided that we started meeting with friends, who all had lots and lots of experience of different kinds, but then they also had like a lot of gaps in their knowledge. And so we quickly discovered that we all knew something that the others didn't know. And by banding together and really serving as each other's board of advisors, we could support each other to grow our ventures much more effectively. And that was really the incentive for What Now, What Next. And then What Now, What Next, this was about 2 years ago, and What Now, What Next has grown into a collaborative network for women entrepreneurs. And we have members all over the country and a few in different countries around the world. And we provide women with the community and the connections and the expertise that they need to launch and grow their own ventures. And then we just launched a new marketplace, I'm going to say less than 2 months ago, Elaine, where women can sell their products and services and also find the products and services that they need while supporting other women-owned ventures. So they can, women can really come right in and support other women emotionally, with expertise, and with their pocketbooks, their wallets too, so.
Yeah, tell us. So, speaking about the marketplace, which I was really excited about to see, I think it's genius. Great idea. But what do you think, of course, what do you think, how has it been, I should say, in having that? Well, first tell our listeners how it works with the marketplace, because I know there's some opportunities to post freely, your listing, and then, how it all works. And then how has it been for the company or the website in opening up this space for people to be able to do that?
Right. Well, so, anybody, I hope, I'd love to have you create a listing for Support is Sexy. I'd love to promote that for you.
Sure. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. So definitely create a listing in our marketplace. And there are different kinds of listings.
Right. Different industries and.
Yeah, different industries, different categories. And what you can do is you go into the marketplace, you click on create a listing, you choose a category to create the listing, and then you can create a profile so that people of yourself, so you present who you are, what you do. And then you create the listing. And so, as an example, if you have a workshop or course that you want people to sign up for, you can promote what it is, the price that you're charging people to take it, link to your business PayPal account, and then people pay that way using PayPal, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't charge for listings, but we take a 5% transaction fee off the top. So, or you may want, like one of our members has a shop and she's selling these particularly beautiful handbags. And, you can buy them on the site. Some people do counseling. They want to, but somebody had, a potential client would want to talk to them first. So first you talk to them, and then if a relationship is established as a result of using our marketplace, we send quarterly report of the people that we sent to you, and then, expect you in return to let us know which transactions were done, which business deals were made. And our aim is to, increase the marketplace, to bring in as many different kinds of women as possible. Women, we have graphic designers, we have writers, we have people who do brand development, we have people who do social media and SEO. And eventually, as our marketplace expands, we want businesses to be able to find women to support diversity within their own company. So to hire consultants from our marketplace.
Right. And is it possible for people to list more than one business if they have, say, they have consulting, but then they also have, like me, a podcast, or there are different categories, as long as it's posted on there. And then, as you said, it's because each transaction, the company takes 5%. So this way it's not like, you're being one side or the other. It's a shared opportunity. That's the words I'm trying to find. Yeah.
Excellent. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So, it's just starting out. We've just started to have meetings with potential partners. This week, this has been a crazy busy week. My partner, Peggy Doyle, was here. She lives in San Jose with her husband and family. And we had, we worked all weekend because we had a workshop on Monday, and we had 40 women come to a co-working space called Empress One, 40 of our members. And they, it was awesome to be in a room of women business owners, women entrepreneurs supporting each other. We went, and so each woman told the other women in the room what their business offered, and they asked for the support that they needed from the group, and then they shared the support that they could offer to the rest of the group. And support is sexy, right?
That's right. No, absolutely.
Yeah, I know. It was great. It just felt great, Elaine, to be able to provide those opportunities, in person, to really be with our New York City community. Then, at the same time, to have a scalable business, the marketplace provides us with the opportunity to do that.
How do you see the marketplace evolving? Since you mentioned about it being scalable, what do you see for it? Well, I know you just started it a couple of months ago, but still, I'm sure you're seeing sort of, how it's working and experiencing it, or how the members are experiencing it too. But how do you hope to see it evolve?
Well, I hope to see it evolve by bringing in like-minded partners. So we met with the new director of We NYC here in the city, and we're talking about collaborating. And they have 1,500 members who we hope to be able to provide an opportunity for them to create listings in our marketplace. And then, and organizations like that. I mean, we have a whole list. We went to meet with the Small Business Association. We're going to meet with SCORE. We're going to meet with women's business centers. We're going to meet with all kinds of organizations that support women entrepreneurs that don't have a marketplace, right? And do partnerships. And then we want to bring in business partners who, as I was started to say earlier, can source consultants from our marketplace, so that there are buyers and sellers that we're bringing together, and it's going to be an interesting ride. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it. Well, I'm excited to post my listing for Support is Sexy, but yeah, I'm excited to be a part of it, and it's great. And let me know what you think. It's great to see, I think, women entrepreneurs, of course, but the fact that I at least have run into so many women entrepreneurs who are looking at ways to serve women or serve other entrepreneurs in another way. So whether it's creating something like yours, or it's a podcast, or it's a product, or whatever, I feel like we're a lot of us are in the space of looking at how we can not only just, generate revenue, which of course is part of business, or have a profit ideally, which is part of business, but also how to be of service to each other.
I could not agree more. I mean, I think that, it's so important for women to support other women. And I've been lucky in that way. I mean, I think, some women who stayed in corporate America felt that, there was only room for so many women at the top of the ladder, and found that women were not all that nurturing and supportive. But I have been very fortunate, maybe because I've run my own businesses. I've always hired a lot of women, because I just think women have an amazing work ethic. They're collaborative. They like to be part of a team. They love to be in an environment where it feels good to go to work every day. And I really, really feel that we have to support each other. And that, particularly in this environment, it's never been more important, and maybe, I think incredibly sadly, we didn't break the highest glass ceiling in our country, but there's no reason that we can't support each other to be leaders in our own lives, and to be, to run successful businesses. And we need each other to do that.
And to feel empowered. Yes. A word that you mentioned earlier that I wanted to ask you about is the word reinvention.
Right.
Yeah, I love that word. And I thought about that with your site and just the concept. But talk to us about the power and the importance of reinvention for women today.
Well, I mean, I think, it's interesting that 40 is the typical age that women start their first business. And it's the age that I started my own business. And maybe it's not a coincidence. I think that, we may start off working in a career that, like me, teaching, or somebody who has another job in corporate America, and that lasts for a certain amount of time. And then either you are downsized out, or you opt out, you choose to leave to follow your passions and pursue your dreams, because you've had so many experiences, particularly for women over 40, that you feel ready to try something that you really believe in. And I think that, life is an ongoing process of looking at where you've been and where you can go. And Steve Jobs once said something that really resonated with me, which is that creativity is connecting the dots. And by the time women have reached 40 or some younger, we have so many accumulated dots and so many experiences to put together to really say, gosh, I know so much now. Now, what's next? What do I really want to do? And then that's what I mean by reinvention, is just like taking stock in a way, of where you are in your life and where you want to go. Maybe some people don't need to I think whether you reinvent your career or not, you're always in the process of reinvention, because life is throwing things at you, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right, you can't avoid it. You're going to evolve, hopefully, whether, like you said, whether it's through your career or business or not, but you personally are going to have to adjust.
Exactly. And if you don't evolve, you're going to be in deep trouble.
I was going to ask you that next, actually. What do you think about some of us sort of stay stuck in one place because we're afraid to ask what now, what next, right?
Right.
and afraid to be. So
Right.
what do you think about that? And what would you say, I guess, to women who are sort of feeling stuck and afraid to ask that question? And have you ever been afraid to ask that question?
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, anytime I've taken on anything new, I've been afraid. Like, just reminded me of the first time that before I started, created a television series of any kind, I was a production manager. And then I became a producer, and I was going to go out on location, and I'd never done it before. And I was going to be traveling with a television crew I was working on Children's Television Workshop to film a story on miniature horses. And I had no idea what I was doing. That's an exaggeration. I had some idea, but I'd never done it before. And I was really scared. But I remember a very, very close male friend of mine. He did the sweetest thing. I was staying in a hotel out, I think it was Denton, Texas, actually. And he sent me a bouquet of flowers and said, "Congratulations, you're a terrific producer." And I was like, whoa, that is so cool. I think you need people around you who support you
and affirm you
and remind you that you can try new things. You can take risks. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? You won't succeed. You're not going to die.
Right. That's so funny. So many women I talk to, and I say that too. You're not going to die from this. You're not going to die. Will you die from this? What's really, and just when we're thinking logically about what is there really to be afraid of, right?
Right. Exactly. So, I encourage everybody to take risks. I mean, when I'm starting something new, I always try to think about, like, what is the end result? Like, if I were when I was creating a television series, it was like, well, I want to get it on the air, but okay, well then what's it going to look like? And what are all the working parts going to be? And who's the team going to be? And what's the story going to be? And, you have to, like for a woman who's starting a business, you have to be really clear about exactly what it is that you're going to offer, who your customers are going to be, how you're different from your competition, and what's going to set you apart. And then, you develop the story around that, right? What's your brand story? It's funny. I just did a workshop for 35 women on that about 2 weeks ago with the NYU Women's Initiative. And that was it was fun. There were about, 35 or 40 women, and we went through the whole process.
Right.
Of how do you do that? So, I mean, it's a process like anything else, but you have to really, be able to define what it is that you want to create and why you're creating it before you can do it, before you can set out to start the process, right?
So what does your support network look like, Joanne?
I have a wonderful family and great brother who always cheers me on, and I have my daughter, and I have really close women friends who I adore and who adore me. And, most of us are running our own businesses or, consultants, really in the process of supporting ourselves financially and generating the money that we need for our families and for ourselves. And that's my support system. I have a really tight network of good friends. And I just think that's so significant,
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious, what did you teach Lola about sort of becoming a woman who could really go after her dreams? You talked a little bit about how you were, well, it wasn't really how you were raised. It was more about the time that you came of age. So I'm curious, what did you teach her as your daughter about what she could create in the world?
Well, I taught her that she could really do anything that she set her mind to, and that there was, and luckily she's growing up in a time where, boys and girls are not treated all that differently in terms of what they can accomplish and in terms of leadership. So, she got that reinforcement in school too. But I just, told her that I told her early on, it was a really important thing for me to learn, that your thoughts create your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And
thoughts become things.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So really be careful about what you think, choose what you want to do, and then take action to do that, and Lola has always been a self-starter and very filled with enthusiasm and energy. And, she, like as an example, I mean, she, how a lot of girls have decided to work in the STEM part of the world, science, technology, engineering, and math. She's always been a math whiz.
Mm-hmm.
And, last year she stayed, she'd stay up till 3:00 in the morning doing coding. So I didn't have to say, Lola, stay up till 3:00 in the morning doing coding.
Right.
But I think I have been a role model in many ways by Lola's come to work with me. When Lola was 5 years old, she was helping me on productions. She was like a production assistant. Lola has done, sign-in sheets for me and at workshops for women. She's been exposed to.
Right. She's been able to witness it.
Yeah. She's been exposed to a working mom, and it doesn't seem unusual to her at all.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. I asked just because I've been speaking a lot lately. I guess it's just been on my mind to, of course, women entrepreneurs, but women with daughters especially. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, for all of us, it's sort of during this time, what are we teaching them? I know a lot of women or moms have become much more aware of what they're telling their daughters, especially as we all experience these changing times right now.
Oh, my God. And last week, I dropped Lola's at Smith College, and I dropped her off at Smith College and was lucky enough to hear Rachel Maddow, who is talking to the student body. And, and she said, yeah, these are scary times. Really, everybody's filled with fear, but we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And I thought, whoa. What a great thing to say, right?
Mm-hmm. I love Rachel Maddow. I watch her show every evening, or at least tape it and watch it. She has the greatest openings ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As a TV person, I'm sure you appreciate that.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It was great.
So what would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
I would say it's taught me to take risks, that I can take risks, and that if I really believe in something and follow through, that I will eventually create what I want to create. But that, it's taught me to have perseverance and to believe in my abilities to succeed and to keep learning new things and to keep challenging myself. And I think it's kept me young. It's kept me thinking young. And it's kept me excited about life.
When did you come to the point, I'm curious, where you realized this idea of sort of law of attraction, as mentioned earlier, of thoughts becoming things?
Well, I would say that was probably 25 years ago or 30 years ago, I had a meditation teacher whose name was Guru Mai Chidvilasananda, and I did a lot of workshops where, is really Eastern philosophy brought to the West, of that whole idea of your thoughts creating your reality, mm-hmm. and that, just to be careful with your words and what you say to yourself and what you say to other people. And, another thing that's really been helpful to me in staying balanced is I do a lot of yoga, and while I'm doing yoga, I really, focus on my breathing, and I have a mantra that I repeat to myself, and it keeps me centered and balanced and, expanded in a certain way. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. I'm curious, you don't have to tell us what your mantra is. I know for some people it's very personal, but is it something that is an affirmation for you, or is it something that sort of, as you said, just keeps you focused? I know sometimes people focus on a number or, a certain vision that they have, and then others have a more extensive or longer mantra within their meditation. What works for you?
Well, mine is a very simple one. It's a Hindu phrase, Om Namah Shivaya. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's really tying into your higher self. I bow to the energy within. I, open myself to energy without. I'm not, even the literal translation is not as important as just the connection to the energy. Mm-hmm. And just the understanding that there's something bigger than me out there, whatever that happens to be, I don't want to, so I think that, I don't want to get too deep into that, because I think everybody's way of dealing with that is so personal, but that's what works for me. And yoga, meditation, using a mantra has helped me to keep centered in the, during the most stressful times. And I think right now it's a pretty stressful time, it's a stressful time for me in my business. It's a stressful time for the world overall. It's a particularly stressful time for women, mm-hmm. and, diverse groups within the United States, all of us, and I think we're all in it together, and we have to support each other in whatever ways we can.
Right. Support each other. And I think, to your point, sort of find these practices that work for us in these moments.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've been starting to ask people more just about their self-care practices, if they have any, it's just helping each other figure out how to get centered. So, so in closing, Joanne, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would it be and what would you say?
Mom, thank you for giving birth to me.
Oh, that's sweet. That's a good one. I think they probably all should start there.
I wish I could say it to her. I wish she were still alive, so, could hear it, mm-hmm. person to person.
She hears you.
Yeah, right.
So tell us now how we can support you, especially, give us the websites that we should go to. I'll have links to everything, but just how people can find you, social media, or anything else that you want us to be on the lookout for.
Okay, awesome. I would say the simplest thing to do is, you'll have a link to our website, mm-hmm. What Now, What Next. The marketplace URL, if you can put that on the page as well. And if you, when you go to the What Now, What Next homepage, at the top of our navigation on the right-hand side of the homepage, there's a very big red bar that says Marketplace.
Right.
Now, then click on that link to the Marketplace, and then click on Create a Listing. And when you click on that, you'll be asked to become a member, free, totally free, and then just create your listing. And the more women we can get in that marketplace, the more valuable it will be for other women. The more women we have supporting each other, the more diverse kinds of jobs and women who are designers, women who do social media, women who, like you, who create wonderful podcast experience that's so life enhancing for women. But to just really have that, as many women as possible share what they do, offer their services. It's so simple to link to your PayPal account. So that's one thing. And then, what was the other part of the question?
Social media or anything you want us to look out for if if you have other events coming up.
Yeah, LinkedIn. What Now, What Next is on LinkedIn. You follow it. Please follow us there. Social media. We're on Facebook. We have a Twitter feed @now_next, and we're on Google+. And our website has our upcoming events. Our marketplace has our upcoming events. And when you become a member, we send out a newsletter so that you have another way of being updated on an ongoing weekly basis.
Excellent. Very good. And so for everyone listening, as I said, we'll have links to everything. But if you want to go there now, not if you're driving, but otherwise, go to whatnowwhatnext.com, and directly to the marketplace is marketplace.whatnowwhatnext.com. But as Joanne, as you said, there's a bright red on the homepage of the regular URL, whatnowwhatnext.com, for the marketplace. But for everyone listening, sign up, free listing. As Joanne said, it helps to build that community and for them to be able to have these partnerships and connections with other outlets or organizations that could potentially help women entrepreneurs and partners and all of that stuff. So I just think it's so important for all of us to be a part of these communities, of course, if it aligns with your own vision, but, to align together to sort of support each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing what we do.
Of course.
With community, Elaine. It's such a treat meeting you, and I look forward to meeting you when you're here in New York in person.
Absolutely. Now, thank you so much for being here. And before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
Be brave, be bold, take risks. Just do it.
Just do it. Excellent. Joanne, thank you so much. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Joanne Roberts. Be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, search Joanne, JOANNE, and you'll see her show notes there, links to all of the resources she mentioned, and of course, how to list your business on What Now, What Next within their marketplace. You definitely want to take a look at this. If it makes sense for you, it only takes a few minutes. List your business there. You never know who you might meet, who you might connect with. So be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com so you can get more information. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate you. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you so much for being here. If you love it, I would love to get a review from you on iTunes or Stitcher. Whether it's your first time or you've been listening forever, please leave us a review so I can hear what you think. A 5-star review is fantastic, but any feedback that you give me is so appreciated. Again, thank you so much for listening. And for now, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.